So, first and foremost, today I want to talk a little bit about African spirituality. Not going to go too in depth today, just the basic stuff. Just starter basics, right? The average person, when you talk to them and they're from the more, how do I say this? Popular religions. Look, this is it's a no judgment zone, but it's also I can't walk on eggshells with you guys. For most of us in our indigenous backgrounds, it was an invader religion. It was forced upon your people. So those religions look at African spirituality as evil because they're conditioned that way. You know how many people think I don't believe in God because I don't consider myself a Christian anymore? How many people have contacted me since my video on June 3, and so they're so sorry that I went through what I went through and it took me away from God? They didn't listen. And it's lack of knowledge. I knew it was coming from a sincere place though, because they understand God in the way that they understand God. And they didn't listen to my story and understand that I'm the closest to God that I have ever been. And I understand why the majority of the world, before invasions and being forced in religions, and why they didn't force each other to be a part of their religions in parts of Africa and other parts of the world as they branched out. They weren't forcing each other to be a part of their religions. And their religions were very similar. It's not even religion, it's a way of life, it's cosmology. And what's the difference? And the different cosmologies, it teaches you how to be and move as nature does. Because that is God. Nature is, in the flow of nature is the expression of God. Because that is life. As God creates and it spreads out, all that it spreads out, that is continuing life, is nature. Is it. It is of God. Anything that goes against the flow of nature and attacks that is not God. And I was able to connect more with those kind of teachings because it's easy to understand and connect with God and understand the God in you. When the Bible says you are made in God's image, it's hard to understand what that means for a lot of people. But in African spirituality, it makes it very understandable. And they think of the different African spirituality systems or ways of life as like poly or whatnot, like they worship multiple gods. Well, first and foremost, the word God is not an African language. That came later. Those are younger languages that even exist in, that word even exists in. So even utilizing that word is an attempt to connect with people who don't know the other words or names that God has had, but so that we can stay on the same place and relate, so you know what I'm talking about when I mention things. But when you're dealing with like North to Eastern Africa and where Nile Valley civilization, what they called God was Unta, where later was called Neter, and where the word nature came from. And Unta means all things. It means the all. It is the father, mother, spirit of creation. Yes, I said father, mother, because divine energy is one. It only splits into, well, as we exist as different creatures to procreate together, to bring that divine energy together. And then that is God. When the masculine and the feminine comes together, now you have completed is the love and design of God. Because God is balance, and there is a masculine and feminine energy in all things that exist. and more in others, but depending on if it is considered a masculine or a female or a feminine. My cat over there hunting. So that's the energy when it comes to Nile Valley civilization. And then you have a Ludamare in the Orisha way of life in West Africa. And that is a masculine. That is, they went along with the masculine being creator. But it's not poly. That's what I'm going to get to you. That's what I want to get. Because even with voodoo has been so stripped and so disrespected that people think of voodoo and they only think of the trickster. The trickster that works with the creator. The creator created. And not the entire way of life. Voodoo itself means spirit. It's not evil. You know, you're doing evil practices and sacrificing and just needles and bodies and stuff like that. When you go to a voodoo ceremony, they have an all white, it's purified, it's beautiful, they're connected with nature and connected with God. And yes, people of these backgrounds in ancient times, they understand mysticism, they understood magic, because they understood how the universe flows and how nature flows. And they could work with nature to make things come about by honoring it, by giving it energy, by understanding how particles move. They understood quantum theory before the word. That's what the magic was, and they utilized it for healing, not for killing and destruction. That's not of God. Unless it's a part of, only time God kills something off is if its existence was hindering or like blocking the existence of its creation in general. Like it needed to, like turning dirt for new stuff to grow. Like that's the only time God moves like that. But there's people and there's energies that enter people to where they just are destructive and want to kill just because. And that was the invaders. They stripped people's understanding of life and how to connect with the magic of living energy in all things. Stripped that and then told them that it was evil. Don't even think about it. And beat it out of them. Why? Why did they not want them to know how connected they could be with nature and God? Because people with no connection to spirit are easily moved. They make slaves. They easily can be enslaved and do what you want them to do. Now, somebody here is listening and they're like, but their African spirituality, they're known for having multiple gods. So let's talk about that. When you're dealing with Nile Valley civilization, that's people who talk about Kemet and Egypt and stuff like that. They were not multiple gods. They had Unta and then they had Untarus. Untarus were creations under Unta, or beings that operated under Unta or within Unta, and they had specific jobs to operate. Like God has angels, like a priest has saints or priests and priestesses. That's what they are. And they were, you had the Unturu that helps build, Unturu of healing, Unturu of this, that, and the other. But they are not the creators of life. They are not God. We honor them and we give them energy for their particular, by honoring them, you honor God. Because you trust that God made these creations and these life force energies to grant the wisdom that is needed. So for example, if you're dealing with Christianity, your main Unturu would be Jesus. His skills are carpentry. His skills is alchemy, because he knew how to turn water into wine. He knew how to walk on water. It's alchemy. He knew how to utilize the particles and move them. What people call evil and magic when you're dealing with Africans. But he was African. When he's described in the Bible, he's black, copper, foot copper, hair like wool. We're magical beings only because we understood how to operate in God's image. But we have been very diluted, and the average human dies never learning or accessing more than 10% of their brain. And told through media, movies, shows, it's that only imaginary to experience certain things, and that's not true. But because we've been so devolved, it would take a lifetime for most people just to get anywhere with it. Because in most of your spiritual practices, you're not meditating. Sometimes some people do fast, but do you understand what's happening with the body when you fast? Do you understand why you meditate? What's the reason for being clear? To get the wisdom that comes through from spirit. So I want to share something with you guys, because and speaking of spirit, they just told me to share something with you. Voodoo means spirit. It means spirit. I know I probably just said that a minute ago, but you need to know that. There's somebody out there that needs to know that. So every time you hear that word, you don't hear and visualize what they showed you on TV. You have to understand that what they did to voodoo would be as if when you heard the word Christianity, you only thought of Satan. And what Satanists do in their free time. What if that happened to that religion? And the sacredness of that religion, the stories of Jesus, the stories of Noah, the stories of everybody in there, and what they contributed. What if it was wiped away and the only one left was Satan? That's what the colonizers did to voodoo. Respect it. And when people talk down on it, you don't let them. But anyway, I want to talk about this. On your journey to raising consciousness and coming into yourself, you will go through many steps. And the first 3 is the fight between dual consciousness. What is dual consciousness? It is the consciousness that exists in connection with your DNA, with the data in your DNA that passes through. For those of you who do not know, data from every generation of life, however, from the beginning of where you started, your tribe, there's data that's saved in the coding in the DNA. You have so much wisdom already in your DNA that activates. That's why you know some things feel wrong and some things just feel right and you don't know why. It's the data in your DNA. And some of us have been diluted along the way. Somewhere along the way, the colonizers' DNA got into the pass down. And then their influences on nature, on the society and culture is being plugged into your mind on a regular basis. So it's a fight within yourself to choose what data to activate and what you want to live by. What is your truth? As far back as you could even find your family, even if you can't find the indigenous of your background, where's as far back as you can go? Most black people goes to the south. Why? Because the port of Africa is in the south. There's a port in Louisiana. And that's where a lot of you came from. What was the religion there? What was the spiritual background there? Because that is your truth. So, anywho, it's that fight first. It's the fight of DNA explosion. It is the fight of your truth versus what society has told you to activate or to go with. And then you're going to have a fight with your own people because they choose something different. You choose the indigenous. You choose what your ancestors want you to understand and keep alive and to keep going and to fight for every day of your life. Even if fighting for it is the food you eat. Even if fighting for it is giving honor to the sun that gives you minerals at times of the day. The moon, the grass, the animals that all have a job. If you giving honor and gratitude to that, that's giving honor to the ancestors, because that means you are connected to something in your DNA that you don't even have to have a book for. The plant doesn't have a book on how to move and live. It just is. The cat doesn't have a book on how to give birth. It just does. The duck doesn't have a book on how to fly south. It just does. In stillness, in the first fight of just connecting without all the distractions, is your first fight in being closer to decoding your DNA and wisdom that lives in you, the God in you. What is God? That is just is. You can't duplicate it. Even if you do, it won't be exactly the same. It won't reproduce the same. It won't continue life. That is of God can just continues life. It creates a way. It creates a way. I have plants in my garden that make it on other sides of the yard. I don't even know how I made it there. Life finds a way. That's God. If it's up to God, there won't even be cut grass here. It'll be all the fruits and the vegetables filling up the entire space. The grass would go as high as it could possibly go. Will reach to the sun. Let me show you what God looks like real quick. Just for an example. Just a quick example. This is what God looks like. This lettuce, right? This lettuce. This is the lettuce, right? This is the greens. It's greens that's in this pot. The lettuce used to be in a bed like this. But we moved it. It fell down, so we moved it. Some kind of way of a seed or pollination or something made it into this pot right here with the greens. And it lived. It decided not to die. It lived. And then you know what happened when it lived here with the greens? Because greens and lettuce actually grow well together. They are companion. If you're doing companion gardening, they're companion plants. It knew it. It knew it. It said, oh, you are of a tribe that gets along with mine. Can I seek refuge here? And it did. The greens did not fight the lettuce. The greens let the lettuce live. Let me show you God. Look at these greens. You see how the greens is growing and reaching to where the watermelon is growing? Come in here. Look at this. The greens have been here for years, and they only grew up and only grew to the side. When we planted these greens right here in this pot, the motherland reached to it. Its family reached to it. It put an arm out to it. It said, greens, this is your home. This is your home. If you cannot make it here, we will make it to you. That's DNA explosion. You coming here to this space and you're seeing what the title of this video is, that's DNA explosion. That's your DNA answering a call. That's your DNA wanting to remember, wanting you to remember, which means you're fighting. You're fighting the rape. You're fighting the abuse. You're fighting what was conditioned into you and is conditioned every day. It's put in all the shows you watch. It's put in everything you see. But your DNA is fighting if you clicked on this video. And it's choosing home. It's choosing truth. It's choosing the life that continues life. Nature. Is your life a life of nature or nurture? I chose African spirituality because it pulls me the closest to nature. And nature is closest to God. Move as nature does. You move as God designed you. And no other way of influence. Peace and love, you guys. Have a great day.